Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here for the third presentation of our series of preventing burnout by completing our stress cycle. As you are familiar, your presenter today is Carmel Watson. My name is Sherry Lissy Sigerson, and I work at Shared Health, Addictions, and Mental Health. I will be your moderator here over the lunch hour. I'm going to let Carmel take over, but just to let folks know that there is opportunity for question and answer at the completion of Carmel's presentation. So thank you, Carmel, for being here with us again today, and we look forward to what you're going to share.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. Good afternoon. As mentioned, we are now at part 3 of our 3-part series on the topic. I was joking a little bit earlier. Thank you to those who returned for all 3 sessions. I know that I threw a whole lot of information at you the last session, so thank you for coming back. I promise today is going to be a little bit lighter than that last one. As already shared, my name is Carmel Watson. I work for Manitoba Blue Cross. I'm in a position called Organizational Assistance Specialist. Again, as I've shared, my background is as a therapist. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And more recently, I'm working with organizations in order to promote healthy mental health or positive mental health within organizations. And one of those options that we have is to provide education and support and conversation on a variety of topics. So yes, very happy to be here again. Thank you again for joining for all 3 sessions. If you didn't join for the other sessions, that's okay. I know that they were recorded, but also I'm going to quickly tap on some of the things that we talked about in those sessions so that it flows nicely today. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so this is the agenda. I did share this in the other sessions, so it'll be familiar to you. We split it into 3 parts. Each session or section is about 20 minutes long, so the same for today, with that option to have a conversation at the end or some questions. So part 1, we talked about, what is burnout? Part 2, so last week we discussed the stress mindset theory. And I know, again, it was heavy information, but it really does set the stage for us to understand a little bit more about stress. Part 3 today, we're going to discuss all the ways that we can complete the stress cycle in order to prevent burnout. So these are going to be really practical tips and reminders of ways that we can move through stress. Quickly, again, I thought I would review this slide and just explain what burnout is. So burnout can be defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So as you see on the screen here, a very big component is that exhaustion piece, okay? We feel overextended, depleted, and just plain old drained, okay? The next component that you see, burnout, leaves people feeling inefficient and unsuccessful, so not a great feeling. There tends to be a real decline in the feelings of competence and productivity, and at times symptoms of depression can show up here. And then lastly, as you see, we experience depersonalization with a loss of idealism. So we might see individuals flooded with negative, cynical, or even excessively detached responses to others and situations. So those are some components of burnout. Last week, we touched on something that many of us wrongly believe, which is that once we've dealt with the stressors, we've dealt with the stress. So this is a myth. Stress and stressors are not the same thing. And so we probably do know that. We went over a few examples last week, but let's quickly just review this again as well. So stressors, as you can see on the slide, are the things that activate our stress response. And stress is what actually happens in our bodies, okay? And we talked a lot about the fight, flight, or freeze. We also invited you to think about stress and all of our emotions as tunnels where there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you go all the way through them, you get to the end where you can see more clearly and you're out of that maybe potentially scary and dark place. So exhaustion and burnout happens when we get stuck in our stress and emotions and we don't complete the cycle of stress. So we're actually stuck in the middle of this tunnel. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, that would be a little bit of a scary place. And it can be confusing looking both ways. Where do I go? What do I do? And so in order to get to the light at that end of that tunnel, we have to do the hard work of walking through the tunnel and completing the stress cycle. So that's where we're going to get to today's presentation. So I think hopefully I summed that up pretty quickly in the first 5 minutes. But we're going to talk about ways to complete the stress cycle. So what can we do to get to the end of that tunnel? Now, the first one is to simply recognize your stress response and meet it with compassion. So it's easy for us to be lost or stuck, like I said, in that tunnel if we don't even recognize that we've started walking down that tunnel, or how did we get here, right? We're in the middle. How did we get here? So have you ever, maybe put on your headphones, went out for a walk or a run, only to find, that you're a little bit lost because you got lost in the music or the podcast? I like to listen to audiobooks, or, a very common example might be, on your drive home, right? You've driven home and then you thought like, oh, wow, I don't even remember the drive. Like you were just on autopilot, right? So if we don't pay attention to where our body is going, we won't even recognize the stress response has activated. And if we leave it unattended, sometimes we don't recognize it at all until it causes a problem. So we want to turn towards, difficult feelings, whether it's stress, anger, frustration, and turn towards it with kindness and compassion. So whether your nervous system goes into, again, what we talked about last week, that fight or flee or freeze, that's all fine. Turn towards that, like I said, with, our hope is with kindness and compassion, and let yourself finish the feelings and complete the cycle. So when we recognize these sensations for what they are and acknowledge the stress response as part of you, we can maybe thank it for arriving, thank it for giving us that warning sign, and for being there. So, often in many situations, it's acknowledging, recognizing, and acknowledging that it's there for a reason. So again, that's the first one. The next one is probably a pretty common, a pretty common one that most people have heard of. Sometimes we don't do this, even though there's huge benefits to it. And for some of us, this is a really, really big part of what's helpful for us when we're stressful. So when stress is in the body and it doesn't get a chance to use that energy up, it gets stuck in our body. So it's not just about, we're not talking about just going to the gym, lifting weights. It can be anything physical. So maybe dancing, doing jumping jacks, just using the stairs at work, maybe taking the stairs a little bit faster than you would, running, swimming, even stomping your feet and screaming or punching your pillow, whatever that looks like. All of these work, okay? So the point is that you have to use your body. So since stress is physical, physical activity is a big part of ending the stress cycle. So again, I know I can be guilty of that when I'm stressed, that what I want to do is sit on the couch and do nothing. What is actually helpful for me to move through the stress is to move my body. So we just want to remind ourselves of that. Name it to tame it. This is one of my most favorite ones. And actually Chad had brought it up in our first part of this series because we've talked about it in other sessions. Now, naming our feelings and emotions help us recognize them better when we experience them again. So going back to that tunnel idea, so we can more easily recognize that we're starting to go through a tunnel of stress or frustration if we know what to call it and we recognize maybe the bodily sensations and thoughts that are associated with entering that tunnel or experiencing stress. So I'm going to encourage you to look at this feelings wheel. You could Google it. You can find a feelings wheel anywhere, and just pull it out every so often and check in with yourself and see how you're feeling. This really will help us to increase our emotional vocabulary, and then maybe we'll use this tool more often when we're really trying to find the right words to explain how we're doing. We don't learn about these things such as emotions and regulating our emotions in school, or we didn't used to. We are now. It's really, really cool for any of you who have kids. They're learning about these things at a real young age, and it's super cool to hear that they're learning how to regulate their emotions, how to name their emotions. So it's really, really neat, and we can use this as a way, almost like we're learning a new language. So yeah, you're going to stumble through it a first couple of times, right? Anytime you're learning something new, but the more that we tap into it, the more that we might be able to find the words that really explain how we're doing. And what happens is when we're able to name things, when we're able to put it out here, this is how I'm feeling, it can help us to tame that. I use that a lot, especially when I first started presenting. I think I've shared this example before. Super nervous to present. It's something new. It's something that I wasn't as familiar with. So I would often say at the beginning of a presentation, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And in fact, I think I said that in the first session, just in using this different platform, right? I'm not as familiar with this platform, so I put it out there. I named it. Feeling a little bit nervous about this platform, or feeling a little bit nervous about this presentation. By doing that, what happens is I'm able to tame that nervous energy that I have just by naming it. Naturally, other people soften towards somebody who can be genuine, honest, and transparent about how they're doing. So naming it to tame it is a really great tool. Been trying to use this with my daughter actually, because sometimes the words that she used doesn't really necessarily fit. So helping her to take a look at this and really find the right words can help our kids. And again, if they're learning it at a young age, it's pretty awesome skill for them to have moving forward, that they can be a bit more accurate and then learn how to work with those feelings. So that can help you also work through the stress cycle. Let's see here. Breathe. So again, I want to recognize that that sounds really, really simple. And yet just focusing on your breath can really make a big difference and can help you complete that stress cycle. So focusing on your breath is going to regulate your nervous system. And a really great thing about focusing on your breath is that this is a tool that you have wherever you go. No matter where you are, you will always have this with you. And there's so many different options out there on how to do this. I'm going to share a couple right here with you. So here we go, square breathing, also known as box breathing, or on the side there you see 5-finger breathing. These are examples of how to focus on your breath. So focusing on your breath is one of the most gentlest ways to complete the stress response cycle. And so I do want to say that when you first start practicing something like this, any sort of breathing techniques or any kind of meditation, your thoughts are going to go all over the place, and it might feel really strange to slow things down. That's totally normal. And at the same time, that's the point, right? Is we want to slow things down. So as you can see on the side, as an example here, box breathing is about evening out your breath. So you can imagine even drawing a box, and actually some people like to do that. Maybe if you're sitting in a meeting, you can use your finger and just sort of draw a box on your thigh, right? Or on the table in front of you. So that's an option, or you can just imagine it in your head. So you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then exhale for another count of 4, and then pausing for a count of 4, and repeat. So you can do that. Sometimes I will say this can happen very quickly for people. Once you've gotten into the routine of focusing on your breath, your body actually recognizes, oh, okay, they're wanting to slow things down. So at first, it feels a little bit odd. It might take a while for your thoughts to settle. It might take a while for your heart rate to decrease. And then eventually what happens is you might close your eyes, focus on your breath, and very quickly your body responds. So it's really, really cool. And lots of studies out there that prove that this works. Now, 5-finger breathing is one that, again, my daughter taught me as she learned it at school. So I thought that was really cool. I think it was even back in kindergarten that she learned this one. So please feel free to use any of these with your kids. It's good at any age. And same thing, you can do this anywhere. And so really, it's a lovely way to focus on your breath, and again, at any age. So you start by spreading your fingers out. There's instructions right there on the slide. And you simply start tracing the curves of your finger, adding that intentional breath to the movement. So you're going to inhale as you trace each finger up and exhale as you trace down. Like I said, you can even add a slight pause at the top, just like the box breathing, to really extend and slow down your breath. So 2 examples for you if you want to give this a try. And again, focusing on your breath is going to help complete that stress cycle and just slow things down when perhaps you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. Okay, let's see here. positive social interaction. So whether you are extroverted or introverted, we are social creatures and we have a lot of natural inclination to connect with other people. So positive connections tell your body that it's somewhere safe, okay? Even if you're not physically home, your body can get the feeling of home because it's with somebody who provides you with that comfort. So absolutely, sometimes again, we might naturally, everybody's a little bit different, we might naturally want to go and hide. Again, at times that has been my natural inclination to go and hide somewhere. You know, I'm stressed, I just want to crawl under a blanket and throw it over my head and hide. Really what is needed and what is helpful to help us move through this stress cycle is actually connections to others. So sometimes paying attention to what is our natural way and to honor that in some ways. Okay, there's a time and a place, and maybe I give myself, you know, this X amount of time to do that, and then I push myself to connect because I know that's going to help me move through. So positive social interactions, really, really important. Laughter, and so we've heard this before, and it is absolutely true. Laughter is the best medicine. So we're talking about that real, genuine, sort of like mouth hanging out, not being able to breathe, uncontrollable, ridiculous belly laughter. So good for us. Genuine laughter is an emotional and a physical experience. So it's a great way of completing the stress cycle. Now, one really cool thing that I found out when I was doing a little bit of research on this is that we don't actually have to laugh. We can actually be reminiscing with someone about how we laughed that way and still benefit from it. So I'm going to encourage you all to take a moment right now. Remember a time when you laughed that hard, right? Like maybe you were crying, maybe you peed your pants, maybe you and your friend could hardly breathe because you were laughing at something so hard. So just take a moment to think about when that was. I hope that puts a bit of a smile on your face, and just remind yourself that it's good, okay? Even in really tough times, stressful times, laughing is okay. It doesn't mean that you're not taking things seriously. It means that you are working through things, and having a good sense of humor is a good thing. Affection. So a warm hug in the context of a safe and trusting relationship can do as much to help your body feel like it has escaped a threat as jogging a couple of miles, right? And of course, it would be a lot less sweaty. But just know, again, we're giving you all of these different ways that you can complete the stress cycle, and everybody's going to try different things or be more inclined to different things. So for some people, this is what works. A really nice hug or contact with somebody can make a big difference. The research suggests that a 20-second hug can change your hormones, lower your blood pressure and heart rate, and improve your mood. All of which are reflected in that post-hug, that you've heard of this, the social bonding hormone oxytocin. And so that's what that's about. I think about this at times when, I'm feeling really stressed. A lot of people will say, they'll see somebody that they really care about. And often it is a mom, but you see your mom, and a hug from your mom can just really shift things. Again, that depends on your relationship with people, but as somebody who is safe to you, somebody who's comforting to you, a hug can really shift things and be exactly what you need. So that can make a big difference. So crying. So I will say crying in and of itself hardly ever solves a problem. When the emotion takes over your body, however, that's again a physical expression of stress, of emotion. And when you allow it to happen, it's completing a stress response cycle and letting the emotions go all the way to the end. So it's not getting trapped in your body. Now, I am guilty of being one of those people who used to do everything I could to not cry. Okay, I maybe I saw it as a weakness, or I just didn't like the feeling of it. And so I didn't embrace it. I was uncomfortable with it. So after, some incredibly stressful times in my life, I learned to allow it to happen because I had read about this. I had heard about this, how crying was healing, how it helped to complete that stress cycle. So I tried to tune into the physicality of the cry. I tried to let it happen rather than stopping myself. And I will say there's definitely benefits to it, and now I'm more comfortable with it. And so we want to focus on the sensations of the crying itself without feeding it more, thoughts about the thing that sparked the crying. So instead of really focusing on it, you know, it's a cycle. It's going to begin. Some people don't want to cry because they're worried that they're never going to stop. You will stop, okay? Again, it begins on its own. It has a middle and it has an end on its own. And so, yeah, it can be very healing. I encourage you next time you feel that happening to allow it and see how that goes, okay? It's very much true that this is a healing experience. Lastly on our list here is that we have creative expression. So we can transform our energy through a creative outlet. Everything you make is made out of energy, and it's made out of whatever experiences you've had. So, you know, play an instrument, sing, knit, paint, dance, write, or maybe even just play with modeling clay. So whatever creative endeavor speaks to you, I encourage you to do it. This will help you funnel your energy and help complete that stress cycle. So as you can see on our list here, we have a lot of different options. Again, some of us are going to be drawn to certain things. Some of us might have to push us towards ourselves towards certain things, knowing that it's going to be helpful. So I'm going to put this question out to you now. Maybe you can share in the chat and we can read out some of these comments. Yeah, how do you typically complete the stress cycle? Maybe you recognize some of the things that you naturally do already, and that's awesome. And perhaps you also discovered that there are some other things that you can do to help complete the stress cycle, or that maybe you have to give yourself a little nudge. So before we wrap up and get to those questions, to any questions, again, I'm going to ask you to share in the chat, how do you how do you typically complete the stress cycle? Yeah, I know for me, I already shared with you the name it to tame it is a really big one for me when I'm stressed. I'm starting to try and embrace tears, and I also try to push myself to do something active because I know that I'll never regret that. When I do that, I always feel better after. So those are the ones that I really connect with. Could we maybe share out if there's some comments in the chat, just with what are the different things people are saying that they typically do?
Yeah, hi Carmel, it's Sherry. So I don't have anything yet, but something that if you don't mind me sharing mine,
Yes, absolutely.
something that really spoke to me was the creative endeavors one. So I have a preschooler, and so we're often, you know, using our hands and playing with things that I haven't played with, you know, in a really long time, right? So that feels really good. So we also have someone here say laughter and social interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to do when we're feeling stressed. We might want to avoid a lot of these things, and yet, yeah, when we push ourselves, we feel better after.
20-second hugs.
Yep, love it.
When I feel stuck in the freeze part of the stress cycle and find it very hard to find things that pull me through this. So there's someone who's saying that they still feel a little bit stuck in that part of the cycle.
Well, and what I would suggest in that, like, so you have now this list of different things you can try. So you know that maybe you even have that written down somewhere. So when you're in that freeze, you have something that you can actually look at, but also to share that with the people close to you. Hey, when I'm stressed, I tend to kind of freeze and not know what to do. Here are some things that I want to try. Can you help me kind of help gently push me towards those things? So when you're able to, when you're stuck, when you're feeling like you're frozen and you have somebody else that you trust and you're comfortable kind of help guide you, that might be helpful. So it's about trying new things, identifying what might work, and maybe you try something and you're like, nope, didn't like that, move on to the next one. But kind of enlisting somebody else to help you along the way might be helpful.
I definitely, so someone else says, I definitely use physical activity to deal with stress. I really like the 5-finger breathing method and will try that. Another individual talks about learning to recognize when you were stuck in the stress cycle and trying to use the strategies learned. And there's someone here asking, could you please talk a little bit about eating your emotions? That's a great question. I tend to go towards chocolate, but I know that exercise works for me.
Yeah, so what I would say, and you know, maybe we can even, I'll just say we can move into questions. Here's a resources, but we can move into questions as well, because we're kind of heading in that direction. I would say a lot of the eating and stuff, it's recognizing first how you respond to stress, right? So perhaps the emotional eating. I'm one chocolate, again, same thing. I know when I'm eating more chocolate, it's probably a sign for me that I'm stressed. So really it is about picking up on those things to start with, identifying, hey, here are the signs that I'm feeling stressed. Again, maybe letting the people in your life know, if you notice that I'm doing this more, that's probably the first signs that I'm stressed. And then coming up with a plan for that. Okay, when you see me doing that, let's take a look again at this list on the things that I know actually work to help me work through the stress cycle and complete that cycle. So it might be, if I'm eating more or reaching for that chocolate, that's a sign for me. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, whatever, watch a funny movie or go for a walk with a friend instead. So it's starting to pick up on it and then shifting things. Sometimes that might, the more we do that, that might create some new habits or some new pathways. At the same time, we all have our natural go-tos, right? So it might always be a thing like, okay, that's my thing, that's my sign. So it really is about recognizing it.
There's also a question here. I like to take a nap. Is that a good thing to do?
I think it can be. Again, these are things that you for yourself need to ask yourself. How do I feel after the nap? How long is the nap? Do I feel re-energized or do I feel drained? Am I trying to avoid something by taking the nap? So it really is about taking a closer look at those things, because same with the chocolate. It's not that it's bad to have a piece of chocolate, but do we want to eat an entire chocolate cake and then suffer the consequences of that, right? So little things in moderation and actually asking ourselves whether they're helpful for us is where we want to start. So a nap absolutely can be a good thing. I think generally they say they're quite good for people when they're short, right? 10, 15 minutes, and again, intentional. Whereas if we're deciding to avoid things and sleep for half the day, that's probably not going to be as helpful or feel as great after. So that would be my answer to that one.
Yeah, and goes on to say that they feel refreshed after the nap. So that's also a really good sign, I think, to your body that maybe there's some things that needed to be processed during
Absolutely.
the nap.
Rest is good. And again, if your body is telling you that you feel refreshed and that feels good, then I would say that that's okay and that's what works for you. Anything else, Sherry?
Oh, just folks just saying thank you.
Good. Great. Well, that does take us right to the end here. I can stay on for, I think there's another 3 minutes or so here, so I can absolutely stay on if there's more questions or comments. Again, thank you all for coming back for all 3 parts. I know different pieces from each session kind of brings it all together. And sometimes these tips seem really, really basic, but we need those reminders. We forget when we're stressed or we're burnt out or heading in that direction. Again, we don't always realize that simple things can make a huge difference for us. So going back to the basics can be helpful.
So folks are just echoing that they've enjoyed this series. Just thank you so much, Carmel. Some pieces that have stuck with people is just interesting to learn about the difference between stress and stressors.
Yeah, stress isn't always a bad thing, but we want to recognize when we're going beyond, right?
Oh, what I missed. Sorry about that. Pet my animals, my dogs and cats. That was another one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge animal fan, and I think animals can bring a whole lot. That in itself can reduce your blood pressure and give you all of those great feelings. So the list that I shared, that there's so much more to it. So that, and we're all unique. So find what works for you. And some of that is, combination of the physical affection and the social connections that can be with animals for sure.
And just some more comments around appreciating the tunnel analogy. It will be helpful to explain stress to children. So so we're about at the end. So I just wanted to take a moment, Carmel, and thank you so much for these last few weeks and few sessions with us. It's greatly appreciated. For those of you who are looking at attending more sessions or for review, I know that we're running some sessions in March and that all of these have been recorded, so feel free to share them. They should be on, I think, our AFM website. So that's great. So Carmel, that's all I have. Thank you so much for being here. It's nice to meet you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.